Boo 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 boo. Ladies and gentlemen, I literally had one of those days where I just slept. That's all that happened today. It's the only thing that happened today. I woke up and I stayed in bed, and then I fell back asleep. Then I woke up, I fell back asleep. And then like 4:30 rolled around, and I went, okay, I got a stream to do. God damn it! It was so good, you guys. It was so good. Just sleeping. I had crazy dreams, just crazy wild dreams, which of course I don't remember at all. All I remember is that they were crazy and wild, which is great. I do remember that they were very like in the quality of the dream, they were very nightmarish. Like they were definitely on the like Halloween side of the spectrum. But I never woke up being like, oh. I was never scared. I was never scared. They were just ghoulish and weird, and like there were zombies and like all that kind of stuff. But like the whole time I was having the dreams, I was just like, yeah, whatever, that's fine. That's fine. How you doing, Cotton? Good to see you, Broccoli Cheddar Rice. You gave up on the Duran and Bo of the fifth column. Why? I mean, for me, the Duran has always been liberal. So, to me, Bo, like, I don't pay that much attention to Bo, but I get why people like him, and it's just because he seems like just a good man. You know, that's really all it is that he just seems like he's a good man who's trying, who cares, who's putting who's putting his stuff up because for him, I think it's just a coping mechanism. I mean, for me, this part of the reason I do this is because it's a coping mechanism. Like, I'm not going to lie to you guys. Like, it's a way to cope with what's going on in the world and to not be isolated. Absolutely, that's the truth. And I think that Bo is just not reading enough. I think he's just kind of following his own common sense approach and is doing everything he can to just avoid the logical conclusion about what's going on. Like, he wants to believe in electoralism. I think that's really what it is. Like, he really wants to believe that, yes, we can actually have a genuine conversation about how to run the society and vote people in, and that'll work. It's just not gonna happen that way. Broccoli, was it you that was recommending Come and See? Was that you? Somebody on the chat yesterday recommended Come and See, and I watched it last night. What a this probably explains the dreams, actually, now that I think about it. What a horrible and beautiful film. You know, closer to a horror film, than an actual war film. That like American war films are very much like get you on the front line. That there are scenes that aren't on the front line, but everything in American war films is about preparing you to get to the front line. You're either traveling to the front line, you're discussing what's going on in the front line. There are always these sequences of big shock and awe, and showing you the scale, showing you the scale of everything, right? Whereas I feel like the Russian film Come and See, they went exactly the opposite route, and I feel like it was extremely, extremely effective. That their goal was not to show the scale of everything, but it was a conversation about the horror of the Nazis, right? And the barbarism of the Nazis, and how they were an affliction on the Russian people. That what the Russians were having to do in the face of this threat was horrible. Like, they were conscripting children, essentially, and conscripting and taking cattle and all this kind of stuff. And they were honest about that, which I really appreciated. They were honest about all of that. But once you saw sort of the looming horror of the Nazi threat and what the Nazis represented and what they were doing and how they were acting. And it became pretty straightforward. And the essential theme of the movie, near as I could tell, is how the Russians kept their soul, that they did not turn into the Nazis. That one of the final scenes is that they've captured these Nazis who had burnt down a village with like women and children inside of a barn. Horrible scene, absolutely brutal, extremely well done in terms of production. And so the Russians have captured the men that did this, and there's this, like, everybody knows that they're going to be shot, and that seems just, but the Russians are dealing with the struggle in the moment of, are we simply going to kill them? That there seems to be no justice in that we should, and the main character, the young boy, literally comes over with a gas canteen and just puts it in front. He went through the experience, and so they start dousing the Nazis in gas, and then finally somebody says, no, this is enough, and they all open fire, and they don't light the men on fire. And the final sequence of it is that there's a man holding a torch, and he doesn't even light the bodies aflame. They throw the flame into the water, and I think it's all done to sort of illustrate and show that the Russians are better than the Nazis. That yes, we have to do horrible things. It's war. Yes, we have to fight back. Yes, we can't simply lie down and die, but we will never become like the Nazis. It was a very powerful moment, a very powerful film, I felt. And and then the sequence, there's a picture of Adolf Hitler in the mud, and the young man, the protagonist of the film, is shooting at it, and he's having visions of, and they use actual Nazi footage, and they put it all in reverse to indicate, like, he's this desire to kill Adolf Hitler. And then there's this moment where he's reverted all the way back until Hitler is a baby, and then he doesn't shoot, showing once again that the Russians will never become the Nazis, that they are that they may, even though they went through hell, even though they went through horror, they kept their soul. And I think that's so important for the Russian people. And what a powerful film. High recommend. Come and see. Really, really powerful film about the horror of, and it is a horror film. It's not a war film. Like, it's a film that is set during a war, but it's a horror film. And the Nazis are the monsters. No doubt. No doubt. Yes, I mean, that's just it, isn't it? Like, we tend to completely gloss over what happened on the Eastern Front. Like the opinion of the West is that the Americans won World War II, and it's completely false. It's totally false. Like, sure, the Americans participated right at the end after the Russians were pushing the Eastern Front back. Sure. But I'm going to be straight up. Like, I think that if the Nazis had have taken Russia, the Americans would never have joined that war. They would have just been like, oh, okay, so the Germans own this now, so we'll just negotiate with them. Like, I think that's what the Americans would have done, which makes sense, because the Nazis and the Americans have more in common than the Soviets and the Americans. Hey DM, how you doing? Let's make this chat a Doug Ford love fest. Yep, Ford now plans making it more difficult to get prescription pills from pharmacies. Let the privatization begin. Yeah, he's going full scale. Like, he's going full scale. Like, we don't need to pretend, right? Like, we don't need to pretend like Doug Ford's government is non-fascist. Like, we don't need to pussyfoot around it. It's a fascist government that has fascist intent, that if Doug Ford had access to a military, right, he would be using it in exactly the same way that fascists of the past would. Like, and this Kupi struggle has really revealed that he's just an open fascist, and there's no reason to describe him with any other language. Like, he's the fascist Doug Ford, and I'm sure other fascists who don't like to be called fascists will grumble about that, and liberals who like to cover for fascists will grumble about that. But fuck them. Just very straightforwardly, like, fuck them. Doug Ford's a fascist. And anybody who doesn't want to call him a fascist is probably a friend of his. So we don't need to pay too much attention. Screw Ducky with a cactus. Finally a comment clean enough to get through. Good to see you, Kara. Good to see you, Anemone. Oh man, what a time. What a time to be alive here in Ontario. And the thing that I think is so... like, this is the moment. This is the moment that I've been saying for a long time, right? Fascism is... the rulers are going to begin ruling nakedly. Like, what Doug Ford is doing now is naked fascism, just wide open. The only thing it's missing is Nazi salutes. Like, it's naked, open fascism. And and it can go either way. It can go either way. It can either go that the unions hit the streets, the unions take up a general strike, all of the unions, and we're even seeing some of the unions that have previously endorsed, like, we're seeing Dalhousie students walking out, and I think the students should go on strike permanently. There should be a permanent student strike. No reason to participate in any of this. You've got the Toronto Star, which is owned by Doug Ford supporters, publishing articles saying that we should be livid about it. We've got solidarity marches happening. Right? We've got solidarity marches happening that are being organized by the Ontario Labour Union, right? So we've got that going on. What was the one that I really... legal experts are saying not only is it unprecedented, but it could also open a Pandora's box, right? Well, because of course, if this is how they're going to use the notwithstanding clause, then they literally can use it against everybody all the time, and they will, because they're fascists, right? Like, that's how it is. Construction union that once endorsed Ford government now wants it to revoke back to work bill. So even unions that ostensibly support the Ford government for whatever reason, that decide it's better to be on the side of the fascists than against the fascists, are now saying that they want it revoked. So the truth, though, like the hard truth, is that unless the unions actually all go on strike and perform a general strike in solidarity with one another, the Ford government will just shrug and laugh, because they're fascists. They don't care. Like, they don't care. Like, they're psychopaths. They don't care, right? And unless they experience a general strike and have the province of Ontario shut down, right, over this draconian fascist legislation and this draconian fascist move, then they're just going to continue forward with this. And that can happen, right? If the unions, like if the teachers union and the nurses union, like the police union is never going to do it because they are part of the fascist system. But if the teachers and the police, if the teachers and like the firemen, the construction workers, like all of these people, if they don't join a general strike, then the Ford government will continue acting this way. And more importantly, subsequent governments will continue to act this way because they can. And it will mean the death of the union system. That there's really no reason to be part of a union anymore because the unions don't support each other. The unions won't back one another. And the people who are drawing up the legislation can just say no. And there's nothing the unions can do about it. So what's the point of even having a union? For real, what's the point of having a union? If when you go on strike, they just drop legislation and say, get back to work, here's your $500 million fine and bankrupt your union. What's the point of having these? Right? So we're at a what is called a linchpin moment. The society can go one way or another, and we're going to see how it's going to go. I want to believe that reason will prevail and people's inherent goodness will prevail, but we're a deeply fascist, deeply propagandized society who have been drinking the individualism Kool-Aid for a very long time. And it is completely possible that the unions decide not to support one another, that they decide to completely allow the system of power to overwhelm them, and that we just become an explicitly fascist society. Like, it's completely possible that it goes this way. So I consider this to be the most important thing happening in Canada right now, far more important than the Freedom Convoy ever was. Speaking of the Freedom Convoy, where are they? Where's the Freedom Convoy? Right? They were all about freedom and rights and all that kind of stuff. Where are they? So it turns out that they're just cowards after all. Just selfish little babies after all. Right? Sure, they had the right to protest, but here's a good opportunity. Where's the Freedom Convoy? Oh, fucking nowhere? Oh, okay. Turns out that they're just a bunch of little baby cowards crying in the corner, sucking their thumb after all. Seeing statues honoring Red Army and partisans being dismantled in Ukraine, for instance, is such a tragic thing too, of course. No, the rising of a Nazi state in Ukraine, like, and come on guys, like, it's a Nazi state. Like, what's happening in Ukraine is the purposeful erection of a Nazi state. That's what's happening. The Americans and NATO are doing everything they can to make sure that a new Nazi state is erected in Ukraine. That's the goal. Like, it's the goal at this point, and we shouldn't bother calling it anything else. Like, there's no reason to believe these gaslighting psychopaths when they pretend as though, oh no, we're not trying to erect a Nazi state. That's so hysterical what you're saying there. No, it isn't. It's exactly what's happening, you fucking gaslighting psycho. Like, it's obviously a Nazi state. It's obviously going to be a Nazi state. We are, the leader that comes in after Zelensky is going to do Nazi salutes. Like, that is what's going to happen. Like, the next election is going to happen. There's going to be a far-right leader who, like, whips up the masses. People aren't going to show up to vote for Zelensky because they actually see that he's not that effective. Right? He hasn't actually been doing much of anything. And then the far-right leader takes power and starts doing Nazi salutes and Nazi parades. Like, this is the trajectory I expect to see. There's an alternative trajectory where Zelensky actually does manage to seize power because people are like, no, he's seen us through this war, right? But he's mainly a figurehead. The Nazis don't listen to him. They don't care about him, right? They're doing what they want. And NATO is working directly with the Nazis. NATO's not working with Zelensky. Like, they talk to him, I guess, but they arm the Nazis. Ford is claiming he's standing with Ontario parents and tried to paint the issue as parents versus drug. Of course, that's what psychopaths do, right? That's what gaslighting fascists do. They scapegoat and they try to pit groups against one another. That's a great way to maintain power. Make sure that the finger is pointed at anyone but yourself, right? So it's parents versus strikers, right? It's any why do you think they scapegoat the Jews? Why do you think they do that? Like, why do you think they'll eventually point at Jewish people and be like, it's the Jews? It's because they're trying to scapegoat anyone. And if they can scapegoat literal parents, they will. They're psychopaths. They don't give a fuck. They don't give a fuck. They don't care. If they have to scapegoat little babies, they'll do it. Right? If they have to throw babies into furnaces, they'll do it. We know they'll do it. Like, why are we pretending like any other thing is happening? Good to see you grinning. Good to see you too, Matthias. I didn't say hello. Authoritarianism is efficient until it isn't. The contradictions always catch up to the hierarchy. People don't just want to do what they're told. Well, and also, like an actual authoritarian, like an actual person who is, like, attempting to rule by edict, right? It just doesn't work. It simply doesn't work. That an edict that's passed down from a detached psychopath is obviously not going to work for the mass of the people, right? Like, just simply by definition. Forget about the fact that he's detached and cruel and evil. Like, forget about any of that. Just the idea that it could be possible. The idea that one person who is not living the experience of the people he's governing over would be able to or capable of passing legislation that would actually work is laughable. It's just not going to happen. And eventually the people will be like, look, your laws suck and we want to be rid of you. Whereas the way to the quote unquote authoritarian governments of like China and Russia and all these places are actually like creating collective agreements with one another and listening to one another and actually sending information up the hierarchy, right? They're actually listening to their constituents. And then they pass a law that the constituents actually like, and then everybody follows it, and that's called authoritarianism. I really hope nurses strike, but I see nurses using the excuse that it's illegal. Yeah, like what a cop out. What a way to just go lick a boot. Like what a way to just bow the head to the power structure. Darth Vader proclaimed fighting against the Empire illegal, so I can't do it. Like that's essentially what they're saying. That the evil Empire is saying, oh, it's illegal to use effective tactics, right? Like, what the fuck? Are you a stupid person? Like, that's a stupid thing to say. Like, straight up, that's a stupid thing to say. These people want to grind you into dust. They want to privatize your systems. They want to pay you $0. Like, they are reenacting a feudal slave system. That is what they are doing. And if you're standing around going, but we can't go on strike because they said it was illegal, then you're fucking stupid. You're fucking stupid. Stop talking. Holy shit, that's annoying. Jesus Christ, that's so fucking stupid. I just keep stockpiling beans and rice, yeah. Breakfast Television had an employment lawyer on who said the workers are not legally allowed to strike. Again, like, shut the fuck up. It's so embarrassing. What an embarrassing position to try to put forward. Like, no government in the history of mankind has ever said something is illegal to do when it's perfectly within our rights. Like, no, like, are you fucking kidding me? It's illegal for people to pee. Nobody can go pee. It's illegal. It's illegal to pee. How seriously would you take that? Not very. And so a person standing up and just saying, it's illegal to strike, yeah, that's a fascist. You don't need to listen to their laws. You don't need to listen to the laws that are passed by Voldemort or fucking Darth Vader or Prince John or Lucifer or any of these guys. Like, you don't need to listen to their laws. They're not laws, they're threats. That's what's happening. And the fact that they're going to stand up and be like, it's illegal. It's illegal to... They're just crybabies. They're loser crybabies who don't understand what it is to actually run a government. Because they're incompetent. Like, not only are they deeply narcissistic and deeply psychopathic, they're also deeply incompetent. They don't know how a government even works. I mean, yeah, nothing to lose but our chains and all, exactly. Garv, hello. Like you said, John, doesn't affect us, not our problem. Convoy supporters weren't to be seen when nurses were being laid off pre-pandemic. They don't like that being pointed out to them. No, I mean, like, all the pre-pandemic stuff, that's fine, okay, because, like, they weren't really a movement. They're more of a pandemic movement. But now that they're an actually established movement, where are they? Like, for real, where are they? Like, where are the trucks? Honk, honk. Come on, where are the trucks? Where's the trucks? Right outside Dougie's house. Come on, honk, honk. Where are you at? No? Nowhere? Oh, it turns out you were just babies. Like, just cowardly babies the whole time. Yeah, and the Westies will act like they didn't see this one coming, yeah. Yeah, it's the same as passing laws criminalizing filming police, yeah. Like, they might as well just stand up and be like, it is against the law to disobey fascists. Like, that's all they should say. Like, it's legal for police to step on people's heads. Like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, If anything should show you that this government and the system of government that we live under is completely illegitimate, it's this moment right now. They're literally walking around saying, it's illegal to strike. Shut up. Like, shut up. No, it's not. Like, no, it's not. It's not illegal to strike. I mean, maybe you say it's illegal to strike because you're a fascist, but it's not illegal to strike. Like, we have the right to strike. We have the right to protest. We have the right to strike. The idea that there's such a thing as all they're doing is revealing that they're fascists. That's literally what they're doing, is that they're standing up and they're trying to get as many gullible, moronic, idiotic, narcissistic fascists to be on their side, to go, that's right, it's illegal. Shut up. Like, it's straight up, shut up. And this is the way we should be talking to these people. The people who are trying to say that it's illegal to do so are fucking Nazis. Nazi-level fascists. Because we know where this goes. Like, what's the level right above this? For real, what's the level right above this? What's the very next thing that's right above what they're trying to do right now? Anybody? Anybody got a pitch? What's the very next thing? Well, the nurses should go on strike, but let's represent their argument a little more fully. Maybe don't think it's right to leave people without somebody to care for them. Like, but this is always what the fascists will do. They'll always do this. They'll hold sick people hostage. They'll hold children hostage, right? This is what they'll do. And they'll literally do it if they have to, right? Like, they won't do it, like, philosophically. They'll do it literally. Like, they'll literally round up children and put them in barns and shit if they have to. Like, we've seen them do it. We know that they'll do it. And the idea that, like, oh, the nurses are actually the bad people because they're abandoning people to sickness and nobody's getting the care they need. That's why nurses should work for free. That's essentially the argument, right? Nurses should work for free because if they don't work for free, then people die, right? So why is it that we're pointing at the nurses instead of the people who are exploiting those nurses? Which is exactly what's happening, right? So why are we saying, oh, the nurses are bad for standing up to actually want to live a decent life and actually be paid reasonably and maybe not be treated like slaves? And nobody points at the slaver and says, hey, how about you just actually pay these people? Hey, how about you actually, like, you're the one that's actually killing people, dude. The Ford administration is the one that's actually killing people, not the nurses or the doctors. Right? Like, when's enough enough? Is it when the nurses are being paid nothing? Is that enough? Like, when's enough enough? When does this narrative of people will suffer because there's a nurses' strike, when does it actually tilt to the government instead of the nurses? Is it when they're being paid nothing? Would that do it? Is it when the nurses are working, 80-hour weeks? Is that enough? When's enough? When's enough enough? Right? Because if you're a fascist, the answer is never. The answer is never enough. That they will work you to death. The crux of it for me is that Ford has a lot of supporters. He doesn't have a lot of supporters. The only reason he's in power is because nobody shows up to vote. That's what happened. Right? He doesn't have a lot of supporters. He's got a cult. He's got a weird little kooky cult called Ford Nation that loves it when they all smoke crack together, right? Like, that's what's actually happening. That the people who are voting for Doug Ford do crack with Doug Ford and get their crack from Doug Ford, right? They don't mind that he's a drug-dealing mafia boss fascist, right? They're completely fine with that because they're also living in their house denigrating the poor and the disabled as well. These despicable narcissists. Go talk to any of them. Literally go talk to literally any Doug Ford supporter and you're going to find out very quickly that these are narcissistic psychos. I have held protests at Doug Ford's house and watched the children of these people make fun of the disabled that were in front of Ford's house while their parents watched and smiled. These people are narcissists. They are detached losers who deserve to be rolled over. They deserve a general strike in their face. We should be outside Ford's house all the time. We should be constantly there, right? And we know what's starting to happen. I've just been told by people I organize with that they're getting leery of doing the protests that we've been doing because they've got people following them around now. Like, you guys don't think these people are Nazis? I do. I do. Like, I don't know where you're at. Yeah, they live completely detached lives. That's exactly it. Like, they're completely detached. And also, like, the most parasitic lives possible. Like, they benefit from living right next door to the city, but they don't actually pay taxes to the city, right? And the Ford administration is making sure that that's the case. So they're sitting around complaining about government handouts, but nobody has bigger handouts than these people. Nobody gets bigger handouts than these people. They get to benefit from all of the services of the city. They get to benefit from being right beside the city. They can drive into the city, right? In their fucking Bugattis that they get because they don't pay any taxes, right? And but they don't pay anything, right? They don't contribute at all, 0%. And the Ford administration is making sure that that's the case, and that's why they get the support. So these detached narcissists are parasites across the board. Somebody should come into power and literally just raise their taxes 90%. And then they would cry like little babies, and we would laugh at them because they're fascists. Like, Jesus Christ. Good to see you, Nut Milk. People forget at one point that they used to allow child labor and the weekend. We didn't exist, yet people literally worked every day for scraps. Yeah, and that's what they want. Like, that's where they want this to go. Like, don't fuck around. Like, don't fool yourselves. Like, these people, and the reason why nobody comes out to vote is because everybody intrinsically understands that this is the case, and they see that the NDP and the Liberals are doing nothing to prevent it. Right? That the decline back towards feudalism, the decline in our civil rights, the decline in our living standards, the Liberals and the NDP are doing fuck all about it. Like, fuck all about it. 0%. And moreover, they don't care. For them, it's all just a brand. Right? And then when they would get into office, they'll just do what the developers tell them to do. Keep taxes low, and they'll just do what they're told. They're not going to actually try to confront capital. Right? They're not serious about any of this. And you can tell that they're not serious about it when they actually show up places, ignore everybody around them, and just fucking leave. They don't give a fuck. They don't give a fuck. They're just as detached as Ford Nation. And everybody knows it. And everybody knows it. I think for nurses, the justification is people will die. Yeah, the Ford administration will kill them. That's what they should be saying. Right? That the Ford administration will kill them. Like this, how is this anything other than hostage taking? How is this anything other than hostage taking? How is this any different than the Azov battalion going and setting up artillery shells in schools? How is this any different than that? That's exactly what they're doing, and and so the Ford administration can stand up and point and say the nurses are being negligent and they're letting people die. No, the Ford administration is letting people die. Because they're using that as leverage against the nurses to keep them at work. It's hostage taking exclusively. Nothing else but. And when they tried to revolt, they were massacred. Yeah, Ludlow massacre done by no other than John D. Rockefeller. Yeah, you bet. Got a good old-fashioned... Yep. Hello, I'm a generic millionaire who dodges my taxes, beats my wife, and uses slave labor in Qatar, and I'm here to tell you why communism is bad. Exactly. Exactly. Like, if this... And the reason why I'm so passionate about this, because this is the moment. Like, this is the moment. We decide whether we're fascist or not right here. Like, that's what it comes down to. That if the unions are not willing to actually put up the defense against fascist governments, then that's it. It's over. It's over. Right? Like, we are plunging into the depths of fascism. Yeah, I watched Come and See on YouTube. And we need to understand that that's the truth. We need to understand that that's the truth. That this is not just a passing moment, a minor dispute, right? This is a major assault against the idea that there is even working class independence at all. That's what's happening right here. We are deciding now as a people, are we fascist or not? I've had convos with some Ford supporters, and they are really immature and think they don't need any social programs, and if they could keep their taxes, then they could handle everything on their own. Yeah, they're children, right? Like, they've never actually worked a day in their life. They've never done anything meaningful, right? They're just pathetic inheritors of wealth who genuinely believe that because they're rich, they're important, right? Like, these people are losers. Massive fail sons. They've never done anything important in their life. Most of them are just landlords, right? They literally just exploit people's need for wealth. You're gonna be downtown on Friday? Yeah, I wish I could be, but I gotta pay my bills. Simple as that. Capitalism is a slave system, and I'm a slave to it. And if you want to change that, donate money to my Patreon. Simple as that. I would love to be downtown on Friday, but gotta work. Which is the point, right? Keep everybody working 100% of the time, and then they can't actually organize against the rising tide of fascism, right? Yeah, thanks, Leon. I don't know if I've ever seen you here, Leon. Good to see you. Thank you for your support. These petty bourgeoisie are the perfect buffer for the elites to use against the working class. Yeah. Just keep a little coddled group of narcissistic, detached children, right? Just make sure that you have a whole bunch of people. Just yes men of the apocalypse. That's who they are. They're the yes men of the apocalypse. Just make sure you have a group of people who contribute nothing, take as much as they possibly can out of the society, and yet still believe that they're important, right? Like, and as long as you have that group of people always at your beck and call, then you can win elections, right? Fantastic, bud. Fantastic. Come and See with English subtitles is on YouTube. Just search for it. Shows up at the top. Yep. And easy recommend for me, that movie, Come and See. Like, it's a very honest film. I think its honesty is something that is very, I really respect. I really respect that about the film. Like, it's not trying to pretty anything up. It's not trying to make the Russians look good, right? It's not really, and I feel like it doesn't like need to work very hard to make the Nazis look bad, right? That like everything I saw in that film, I'm like, yeah, like I believe that's how that happened. Like, it seems completely legitimate and completely in line with everything I've ever heard about these guys. Speaking of landlords, I recently found out that one of our family's friend's daughters had all her shit she owned taken or thrown away when the landlord of her apartment sold the property when she was away from Canada. That's super illegal. Like, that's super illegal. Like, she might get like $10,000 in restitution. Like, that's extremely illegal. You can't just go into somebody's property and take their stuff. Like, what are you talking about? Like, what are you talking about? Like, that's fucking crazy. Like, that's legit crazy. Like, if she goes through the landlord and tenant board, she might actually get like, oh, they can't find the guy anymore, so he just stole her stuff, sold it, and then bounced. Well, then she should stop paying rent. Right? Just stop paying rent. Like, if you want the guy to turn up all of a sudden, stop paying rent. Straight up. Like, straight up. Guy stole her stuff, took all her shit, left. Well, she still has the keys, right? Like, she's still getting into the property, right? Just stop paying rent. Cut that shit off. Sweet, free house for her, right? Then if the guy shows up to be like, hey, you owe me rent, take him to court. Like, the guy could like legit do jail time actually for this. Like, this is like a legit, like, he could go to jail for that. You can't just steal people's shit and sell it. Like, that guy actually broke, like, major laws. Like, big scale laws. Like, even ones that, like, legit, like, fascist governments. She already moved? Why? She had free rent. Why? Why move? She had free rent. Don't pay rent. I wouldn't. If I walked into my apartment and all my shit was gone, I'd be like, oh, sweet, free rent. I'll just stay here, change my own lock, so the landlord can't get in, because the landlord's gone, right? Can't find him, right? I'll just change my own lock, and then I would just have a free property that I would sit in, right? Get more stuff. And then if they showed up and were like, hey, you owe us back rent, I'd be like, haha, okay, great. Now I get to sue you, because here you are. Like, why move? I mean, I understand it from, like, a psychological perspective. You want to get the fuck out of that situation and all that. But, like, I don't know. I feel like she was in a situation where she could have free rent for the rest of her life. Or, at least for a while. Ugh. What a time to be alive, man. What a time to be alive. I don't care about this story. Yep. Ford government filed 3 motion notices to pass Bill 28, the legislation using the notwithstanding clause, to impose a contract on Coopy education workers by Thursday. So that's literally tomorrow. Like, isn't it weird how, like, all of the homeless people that are in the streets, the Ford government is just like, yeah, whatever. Like, those people just need to get jobs. Right? Like the declining care for disabled people. Yeah, those people just need to get jobs, right? But one group goes on strike, and all of a sudden it's 5 a.m. legislatures. We gotta pass major. We gotta move fast, right? Isn't that interesting? Isn't it interesting to point out that when it comes to actually taking care of citizens, ensuring that people have food and shelter, right? No, those people could live in the streets and parks, and in fact, we're going to throw cops at them, right? All the time, just like uproot their lives, destroy their property, do everything we can. Oh, you can't build them tiny homes. No, that's a fire hazard. Yeah, okay. Like funny how that's all happening. But if the Coopy education workers go on strike, we got to get in there tomorrow. 5 a.m. legislation. We gotta drop the most fascist legislation that's happened in the country. Like, Ontario unions to hold emergency hands-off workers' rights rally. That'll really convince him. Yeah, have a rally. That'll really get him. He'll for sure 100% care about a rally. Oh, wow, you did a march in front of the place that he works? Oh, you convinced him. That's gonna do it. Just weak. Just weak. Just straight up. Like, I can't imagine a weaker response than just like, let's have a rally. He doesn't care. He does not care about your stupid rally. If anything, he's going to be sitting up in his office looking down at your rally, smoking a cigar, getting a blowjob from an intern, giggling about it. Right? Like, he's a narcissist. He doesn't care about you. Like, this gets him off. No, of course, because the system rewards obedience. The system rewards obedience. The more you obey, the better you do. Until you get betrayed. Here you are, right? Until the moment of betrayal, right? Then the system pretends as though it gives a fuck about you. It's a good idea for a YouTube channel, Midnight in Canada, bringing light to the laws that are passed quickly against the population. Yeah. Isn't that funny how when it comes time to, like, pass legislation like basic income or raising the rates for seniors or raising the rates for the disabled or anything like this, well, I don't know, we got to really, you know, all the money, but when it comes to, like, literally stripping people of constitutionally and charter rights, like enshrined in the charter, Nope, got to get rid of that. That can't be part of it. Like, this is the thing that's so fucked up about what the Ford administration is doing, is that when it goes to the Supreme Court, it will be struck down, right? Like, it will absolutely be struck down. Any fine that they levy, anything that they put forward, the Supreme Court will be like, absolutely not. And it won't be a big debate. Like, it really won't. It won't take like weeks and weeks and months of dissertation and evidence and all this kind of stuff. It literally will be the Ford administration going in there and being like, we wanted to strip people of rights that are directly enshrined within the charter that in 2012 the Supreme Court of Canada upheld. And the Supreme Court of Canada will be like, no. And that'll be it. That'll be the whole conversation. Like, what the Ford administration is doing right now is embarrassing for it. It's embarrassing for the people who voted for the Ford administration. Like, if I find out that you voted for Ford in the second election, I think that you're the worst person on the planet. I will gladly spit at your feet. Like, just despicable people voting for the Fords. Like, god damn it, dude. And then if in the next election you vote, if you still vote Ford, I hope that you die. I hope you literally choke on a chicken bone and die. Like, fuck you. So moving on from the Koopy stuff, Canadians have never felt worse about their finances. No shit, we've got fascist governments that are destroying us. Canadians say their personal finances haven't been this bad in more than a decade, as they cope with falling prices for homes and rising prices for everything else. In weekly polling by Nanos Research for Bloomberg News, 47% of respondents said their finances have worsened over the past year. That's the highest ever reading for this question in surveys going back to 2008, surpassing the depths of the pandemic and the global financial crisis. Only 13% said their finances have been improved. So Ford voters, right? So Ford voters. Every week, Nanos Research surveys 250 Canadians for their views on personal finances, job security, the economy, and real estate prices. Bloomberg publishes 4-week rolling averages of the 1,000 telephone responses. The Bloomberg Nanos Canadian Confidence Index, a measurement of sentiment derived from polling, declined for a 9th straight week to 42.1. The lowest record outside the last 2 economic crises. Like, we're collapsing, man. Like, it's a collapse. And the Ford administration is making sure that collapse is going to be into fascism. Canadians are extremely pessimistic about the outlook of the economy, with 64% saying they expect it to deteriorate over the next 6 months, and only 9% seeing an improvement. Ford voters. Sentiment around real estate has been sliding since March. When interest rates began to rise, 40% of Canadians currently anticipate falling home prices over the next 6 months. That's little changed from last week, but is well above the single-digit levels from earlier this year. Job security remains at about historic averages, with 13% of respondents saying that they are at least somewhat concerned about losing their job. Just a fail state, just a failed country. Like, literally, take a look at what's going on in the UK. That's what's happening to us. We're just going to march down that, and our politicians are going to become that level of psychopathic, right? They're just going to become the most narcissistic. Like, we're literally going to start seeing bankers get appointed, like what happened in the UK. Like, just Jamie Dimon is going to be appointed the president of the United States at some point. Yeah. Canadians, I can't afford to live. Just vote harder. Just vote harder. Yeah, okay, let's get basic income. That's communism. You can't do that. That's communism. It's absolutely fucking brutal. Yeah. Oh, you'll destroy But what's funny about the basic income thing is that there's enormous support for it. Among Liberal and NDP voters, the support is about 80%. Like, it's huge, massive support. And then even amongst Conservatives, the support's at about 50%. So it's got, like, super majority support across the board, and the legislation still can't get passed because the oligarchs don't want it. It's as simple as that, right? So it isn't even this narrative that you're putting forward here. Like, I'm sure that there's some like Jordan Peterson sycophant somewhere who will be like, oh, but people will lose their meaning and all this kind of narcissistic garbage that they talk about. But the truth is that the reason why that legislation doesn't get passed is because the oligarchy doesn't want it. That's black and white. It's as simple as that. That the liberals will never table it. It'll never get put forward because their masters will say to them, if you table that legislation, I won't hire you. Like, that's what liberals and NDPers are worried about. They're worried about when they're out of office, where will they go work next? And they know that the place that they're going to go work next is for the oligarchy, where they'll get six-figure salaries for doing nothing, right? And they know that that's the case. And so they're just told explicitly, yeah, if you pass a basic income, we just won't hire you, right? So for them to do that would come at great personal sacrifice. Isn't this a great system we've got? Isn't this a great system where if the people we elect actually want to respond to the demands of the public, that they have to do so at massive personal sacrifice to themselves because we're owned by an oligarchy? Isn't this a great fucking system that we should definitely maintain? Like, Jesus Christ. I'm Joe Brandon, Donald Trump, an old demented... I assume he meant pedophile. It's not even allegedly. No, fuck that. Fuck that alleged bullshit. Like, Donald Trump went to... we literally have a 14-year-old confessing that Donald Trump raped her. Like, shut the fuck up with this allegedly shit. And I'm here to tell you why you should vote for me. Yeah, right. That's how I feel. That's how I feel. That's my opinion of myself right now. Yeah, Trump was like best friends with Epstein for like 40 years. My favorite part about the Jeffrey Epstein story, is that he literally goes to prison for pedophilia and sex trafficking, right? Spends 2 years in a prison for pedophilic sex trafficking, which is like the slap of the wrist of the slap on the wrist, right? Gets out, and people are still like, boy, I can't wait to work with that pedophilic sex trafficker. Like, that's literally what Bill Gates says. That he's like, yeah, I went and talked to Jeffrey Epstein because I wanted to work with him, and I was completely unaware that he went to prison for fucking pedophilic sex trafficking. Like, all these guys, after he already went to jail, still were like, we gotta work with this guy. You would think that someone like this would become a pariah. You would think that someone like this would just be excluded from every conversation from that point forward. But nope. Gotta keep working with the pedophilic sex trafficker. Because they're all fucking pedophile sex traffickers. They don't give a fuck. They don't care. Who knows who had him killed? I mean, it was in everybody's interests to have Jeffrey Epstein killed, right? There were, like you think about, like, Bill Gates, Donald Trump, the Clintons. Like, anybody could have had this fucking guy killed, right? Yeah, there's obviously pedophiles. I don't want to get your channel banned. Yeah. I don't think that is a bannable effect. Like, we can talk about pedophilia on the thing. How am I doing? I'm actually doing pretty okay. I'm feeling the spirit's in me. I feel the spirit. The spirit is moving because, like, this is a very crucial moment for Canada. This is a crucial moment where we get to decide whether we're a fascist people or not, right? And it could go either way. Yeah, 15,000 immigrants to Canada by the year 2025 is insane. Yeah, because they know that what's happening is that the system is collapsing. And so they want to flood as many slaves into the system as they can, right? They want to flood as many people into the system who are willing to accept, 10 cents a day. And so that and it also works like immigrants will usually just vote for the incumbent, right? And immigrants will also, by and large, be excited to interact in a voting system. It takes them a long time and to get to the point where they realize that their votes are irrelevant, that they live in an oligarchy, right? And a lot of them are just kind of happy to be here because we're not directly dropping bombs on them, right? So what we do is we go to places, drop bombs on them, destroy their countries, and then they immigrate here and go like, oh wow, at least I'm not in a war-torn hellhole, right? So they think they've got this like really good thing going on for them. And also, I mean, a lot of those immigrants are going to be Ukrainian, so we're going to make sure that we get as many Nazis in our midst as possible, right? Don't forget, high immigration keeps housing prices up. Yeah. Where are people going to live? Yeah. The cost of living in Toronto is insane, looking from the outside in the United States. Yeah, I mean, like, they don't care. Like, that's just all it comes down to, dude. Like, they don't care. Like, I don't know how many times I have to say this until it finally, like, really sinks in. Our leadership does not give a fuck if we die. Like, it doesn't give a fuck if we die. That if we are homeless, in the streets, starving, they literally don't care. Like, it doesn't matter to them at all. They're completely detached from reality. If they found out that thousands of people were starving in the streets, they literally would say those people should get jobs. That is what they will say. And what they do say. Country's gonna go boop. But I mean, so will all capitalist nations, yeah. Yeah, they don't care about anything until it affects them personally. And they're gonna make sure that it doesn't. Right? They're gonna retreat into their palaces, surrounded by their gates and armed guards, and that's gonna be the end of it for them. They don't give a fuck. Under capitalism, there is competition, but it's between the workers of one nation and the workers of another, not the capitalists of one nation and the capitalists of another, yeah? I love talking to conservatives. There's no such thing as conservatives anymore. They're fascists. About immigration. Trying to convince them the imbalances are due to capitalist greed is like banging your head against the wall. Yeah, what a great feeling. Yeah, they took our jobs. Yep. No, like, the reality is that the fascists in the country are detached. They don't need to, and they don't need to be attached to anything, right? They're not only are they detached from what's going on in the world, right, in the society around them, right, because they live in like palaces and gated communities. They don't need to understand what's going on. They don't need to understand where anything comes from. They don't need to understand any of that, right? So not only are they detached in that sense, but they're also detached from their own history. Right? So you take a look at somebody like Jordan Peterson, who walks around and tells everybody that you're an individual and that you need to ascend the hierarchy, which is a really convenient position for him to take because it means that he's the greatest, right? So it's a very ego-inflating position for him to say. But what was his dad doing, right? Well, his dad's an Alberta rancher. Oh, okay. So where did his dad get his land from? His dad gets his land from his dad. And where does his dad get his land from? Well, his dad gets his land from the Canadian Dominion Act, where any white British man can move to Canada and get 360 acres of free land just handed to them for basically free. It was like $10, the equivalent of $100 today, right? Imagine if somebody said to you, hey, do you want 360 acres of land for $100? Right? And so here's a guy who's literally telling everybody that it's all about the individual and it's all about bootstrapping yourself and it's all about standing up with your shoulders back and it's all about the hard work that you do and nothing else matters, who literally is the beneficiary of one of the largest government handouts in the history of the nation. Like, these people are detached narcissists. Period. Everything that comes out of their mouth is to inflate their own ego. And they are incapable of humility. They are incapable of it. They're not interested in it. Like, They're not interested in compassion, empathy, caring, feeling, love. Like everything around them is just to like jerk them off and to convince them that they're a better person. Why do you think all of them get divorced all the time? Why do you think all of them are constantly losing all their relationships? Why do you think all of them view everything just from the lens of commodification? Because and the only way that they can even survive without fucking killing themselves from the despair of it all is to convince themselves that, yes, I'm the best. When they're pathetic. They're pathetic people who are genuinely destroying their civilization and their country while simultaneously saying that this is the greatest country that ever lived. Like, these are detached narcissists. One thing that struck me after the meeting and talking to super rich people is how mediocre they are in every way. Yeah, they've never had to do anything, right? They've been handed everything. Like, this is what's so childish about these people, is that literally they get houses, land, businesses for nothing, for free. Like, someone like Doug Ford literally had a business just given to him. And he doesn't need to interact with it or run it, right? The business runs itself. He doesn't need to make decisions, and he doesn't. He hires someone to do that for him, right? So he's just like a mediocre loser who doesn't need to actually do anything, learn anything, know anything. And you can see in this confrontation now that he's just a petulant little baby child, right? That's who these people are. That's who they are. And that's what the system generates. It generates grown-ass babies. Even when you show fascists the numbers, they deny and whataboutism anyway. No, they don't care about facts or evidence. Like, they don't give a fuck about that. Facts and evidence don't matter to them, right? Like, literally, these people think that the world exists for them and that you are an NPC. That's literally how they view the world. They're just people, but we're supposed to worship them as the awesomely successful job creators. Yeah, exactly. Which is why I think strikes affront them so much, because it really reveals where the power actually is, right? That, like, they despise striking so much because it reveals that they're worthless. And the Ford administration is going to reveal to everybody how worthless it is. And it is a worthless, like Ontario could have been the front runner in terms of green energy, in terms of green investment, all of this kind of stuff. And the Ford administration has made sure that it'll take us like 50 years to catch back up because they're so pathetically worthless. The richest guy I know smokes weed and drives around in a Maserati, never worked a day in his life. Yep. That's hereditary wealth for you. And he probably thinks that he's the greatest guy alive, right? Because these people are detached narcissists. Like, they don't contribute anything. They are worthless. They exploit everything around you. And we should overthrow the system and be rid of these parasites. Like, straight up. Like, the entirety of Ford Nation should have their wealth stripped. They should be discarded. They should go, and when they complain about it, we should just tell them to go get jobs. I mean, green energy, not the solution. It will destroy the planet. I mean, it's no, I tend to agree that, like, we should stop. Like, we should just stop polluting. That's the true success story of how we get through this. Just stop polluting, right? Literally at this stage in the game, like, what it is going to take, what it is actually going to take, given the hysterical narcissism of these Nazis that rule us, we're literally going to have to destroy infrastructure. That's what it's going to come down to. Like, we're going to have to go to Jeffrey Bezos's, like, launch pads and destroy his rockets. Like, we're going to have to do that because these people are so incapable of like, I actually think that it's beyond incompetence at this point. That it is that they believe that the world and all of existence exists to jerk them off, and they are coming to the recognition and the realization that the same system that clearly exists exclusively for their benefit is also going to kill them. And so their opinion is well, then I'll just kill it back, right? It doesn't matter if it gets destroyed. It's just a bunch of NPCs anyway, right? To them, it's no different than switching off a game system. That's the way they view the world. Like, these people are dangerous psychopathic narcissists. I know I'm really hitting that point today, but, like, this situation with the Kupi workers should convince everybody. Like, we are descending into fascism, and if we don't stand up and fight against it, then we will be overwhelmed. It can happen. It does happen. It has happened. And we know what it means. We know what it means to become a fascist nation. We know what that means. Yeah, degrowth is needed, and that will kill billions, because big agriculture uses the most energy and is the most pollutant. Well, it's not the one using the most energy. The military is. I don't think it's just incompetence. They just don't want to tell people the truth, because no one would participate anymore. They want it to last as long as possible to benefit off of it. Yeah, exactly. Like, they are fine being the... Like, when you watch something like... what was that Mockingjay? The Hunger Games, right? Like, the people who were, like, at the top of that, they were essentially the kings of, like, a shit heap. But they were still kings. Like, that's how these people think. That's what they want. They're fine they're fine with being the kings of a shit heap. Right? That if the place is a smoldering ruin full of people who are completely impoverished, who are barely scraping by, but they're the ones that get to say what happens, they're fine. Like, that's genuinely the truth of it. They don't care about building a civilization. They don't care about, like, being a genuine, like, they don't care about legacy. That's the other thing. Like, they don't care about legacy. So something about Justin Trudeau. I don't think Justin Trudeau gives a fuck about legacy, even a little bit. If he did, he would actually be doing things. Like, here's a guy who's going to turn, like, 80 and is going to look back on his time as prime minister and just be like, oh, we did nothing. Like, nothing important happened during, like, lots of important things happened, but not because of him, right? If anything, he was in the way of all of it. I think the most important thing he ever did was erect a basic income and then dismantle it right in front of our faces. And we all just were like, oh, I guess normal thing to do. Yeah, they live in their own little gated communities. Doesn't matter if the rest falls apart around them. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Meanwhile, Canada prepares war bonds for Nazi-infested Ukrainian government. During the Second World War, the Canadian government appealed for Canadians to buy war bonds to fight fascism in Europe. This came only after Hitler came into conflict with Britain before the Soviet Union, with Canada's government previously being an enthusiastic supporter of fascism in the 1930s. Canada would almost instantly go back to working with fascists after the end of World War II, importing many from Europe, just like we're doing now. In 2022, the Canadian government has once again reintroduced war bonds. This time for a Nazi-infested Ukrainian government used by NATO to wage a proxy war against Russia. Appeals for war bonds during the Second World War manifested through calls for Canadians to buy victory loans, funding Canada's war effort. From 1941 to 1945, there were 9 victory loans with a total cash sales totaling almost $12 billion. The Canadian Encyclopedia notes that about 52% of these bonds were bought by corporations, and the rest by individuals. On October 28, 2022, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau announced a plan to raise further money for Ukraine as the 8-year NATO-led war against Russia, as the 8-year NATO-led proxy war against Russia wages on. This plan involves Canada selling a government-backed 5-year bond for Ukraine, NATO's primary means used to target Russia. Canada calls it a Ukrainian sovereignty bond. Trudeau's plan would also, in turn, make Canada the first country to provide war bonds to Ukraine. This time around, the war bonds are meant to help the Ukrainian government continue operations while targets of this money would include providing essential services to Ukrainians like pensions and purchasing fuel before winter. The Canada Files reached out to Prime Minister's office to ask, can you guarantee that none of the funds raised from these bonds will go to the Ukrainian military or police? We have not received a response. Regardless, a Canadian government bond has been created to support a Nazi-infested government in Ukraine. In meeting with the Ukrainian Canadian Congress, Trudeau discussed how Canadians can now go to major banks and purchase their sovereignty bonds, which will mature after 5 years with interest. These bonds will support the government of Ukraine in fighting NATO's proxy war against Russia and allow it to continue further operations targeting the Russian special military operation in the Donbass. In addition to a war bond for the Ukrainian government, the Canadian government also announced a new round of sanctions targeting various senior Russian officials. These senior Russian officials were tied to the Russian energy sector, including Gazprom and its subsidiaries. Furthermore, Canada plans to impose even further sanctions on Russian justice and security sectors, building off the sanctions for Gazprom. Canada's announcement of these sanctions signifies further commitments to NATO's strategy of economically strangling Russia by isolating Russia from the global market. This is to be carried, regardless of the effectiveness of these sanctions or the imminent consequences for Europe as the winter commences. Yeah, can't afford a UBI, but plenty of cash for Nazi wars. Yep. I don't think we're going to end up with a Chrystia Freeland government, Leon. I think that Chrystia sees the writing on the wall. She sees that the Liberals are in a decline. And I think she's going to bounce to join NATO so that she can be more directly influential in the Nazi affairs, right? Like, she wants to be more tied in with the Nazis, so that's going to help her out with that. Yeah, legacy won't matter when these people are aware of the coming apocalypse that will destroy humanity. Well, certainly destroy civilization. Yeah, to be fair, that was Operation Paperclip, and we got Von Braun. Ooh, can I get these bonds through my Fidelity account? Thanks, John Smith. Does she have the credentials for NATO? Yeah, I mean, her grandfather was ran a newspaper for Nazis, so she's already there. Like, there have been talks with, here, hold on. Let's go a little bit deeper. Chrystia Freeland, NATO job. Chrystia Freeland has a legitimate shot at top NATO job. It's the favorite parlor game. What's the job itself? It says Freeland's name has been tossed around in international defense and security circles as a potential successor to the current Secretary General, former Norwegian Prime Minister Jens Stoltenberg. So her name's getting thrown around. And I mean, who doesn't want, like, the granddaughter of a neo-Nazi? Or not a neo-Nazi, sorry. I keep saying neo-Nazi. Like, she's the granddaughter of a Nazi. And who doesn't want that to be the leader of defense for NATO, right? Makes total sense to me. Conflict of interest. Aiden needs to be on John's Discord. Blah, 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 blah. Aiden and his Canada Files website is great. I do hope her ambitions are higher than Canada. Maybe she can catch a high-speed gift from above. Yeah. No, to me, I mean, like, Chrystia Freeland's very clever, right? Like, she's sneaky the way that Nazis are sneaky, right? And she sees that the Liberal government is in decline. I don't think she wants to be the leader of the Liberals while they struggle for legitimacy, and like I don't think she wants to be the leader of the opposition against a conservative government led by Pierre Poilievre. So I think she's taking a look at other opportunities. I tend to see that Americans usually don't fill those roles because America is actually the leader of NATO. It doesn't need to fill the roles with Americans. It tends to do so with Europeans and Canadians as a way to sort of buddy up, right? As a way to sort of maintain relationships, because America's in charge, right? Like, it's in charge of NATO. It doesn't need to fill the rank and file with Americans, and there are other positions to give to other Americans, right? Within its own military and with its own ranks. It doesn't need to fill it up with American names or American forces. New study finds the rest of the world supports China and Russia. Here's the international community, right? The international community. This is from Caitlin Johnstone. The U.S. is preparing to station multiple nuclear-capable B-52 bombers in northern Australia in what the mass media are calling a signal to China. Yet another example of Australia's forced subservience as a U.S. military intelligence asset. Having bombers that could range and potentially attack mainland China could be very important in sending a signal to China that any of its actions over Taiwan could also expand further. Becca Wasser from the Center for the New American Security think tank told ABC. This is dangerous escalation. It makes Australia an even bigger part of the global nuclear weapons threat to humanity's very existence, and by raising military tensions, it further destabilizes our region, tweeted Greens Senator David Shoebridge of the incendiary provocation. New Australian Financial Review article titled Australia's Alliances in Asia Are a Tale of Two Regions candidly discusses the Biden administration's recent sanctions geared towards kneecapping the Chinese tech industry, in what the author James Curran correctly says is unambiguously a new Cold War. Curran describes the impossible task Australia has of straddling the ever-widening divide between its number one trading partner, China, and its number one security partner, the U.S. While Washington continually pressures Caribbean and ASEAN states towards greater and greater enmity with Beijing. ASEAN countries, as much as Australia, have much at stake in resisting the onset of a bifurcated world, Curran writes, but that bifurcation is being shown through at breakneck pace, using both hard and soft power measures. Australians have been hammered with increasingly aggressive anti-China propaganda, and as a result, nearly half of them now say they would be willing to go to war to defend Taiwan from an attack by the mainland, with a third saying they'd support a war against China over the Solomon Islands. A recent Cambridge study found that this hostility towards China has been on the rise in recent years, not just in Australia, but throughout the quote-unquote liberal democracies of the U.S. centralized power alliance. But what's interesting is that public opinion is exactly reversed in the much larger remainder of the Earth's population, with people outside the U.S. power cluster just as fond as China as those within that power cluster are hostile towards it. This relationship is largely mirrored with Russia as well. Among the 1.2 billion people who inhabit the world's liberal democracies, 3/4 now hold a negative view of China, and 87% a negative view of Russia, the report reads. However, for the 6.3 billion people who live in the rest of the world, the picture is reversed. In these societies, 70% feel positively towards China and 66% positively towards Russia. This report finds that in the developing world, approval of China is higher than the approval of the U.S. For the first time ever, slightly more people in developing countries, 62%, are favorable towards China than towards the United States, 61%. This is especially so among the 4.6 billion people living in the countries supported by the Belt and Road Initiative, among whom almost 2/3 hold a positive view of China, compared to just 1/4 of non-participating countries. The report finds that while Russia's approval has plummeted in the West, It maintains broad support in the East despite the invasion of Ukraine. However, the real terrain of Russia's international influence lies outside the West. 75% of respondents in South Asia, 68% in Francophone Africa, 62% in Southeast Asia continue to view the country positively in spite of events this year. I first became aware of the Cambridge study via a Twitter thread by Arnaud Bertrand, who's a great fellow if you happen to use that demonic app. Bertrand highlights data in the study showing that US-aligned nations' opinion of China began plummeting, not after the COVID outbreak in late 2019, but after 2017, when the US began ramping up its propaganda campaign against Beijing. Apart from the fact that the USA is immensely sophisticated propaganda machine naturally focuses primarily on when the world's wealth and military firepower rests while pushing its global agendas, and apart from the fact that those in the Belt and Road Initiative countries apparently believe they benefit from their economic relationships with China, the disparity between the developed and developing worlds in their perception of the US and its enemies may also be partially explained by another thought-provoking Arnaud Bernard thread, which I quote in its entirety here. A puzzling observation in today's world is that almost no Western leader has laid out a positive vision for the future. Take Biden, for instance. His big vision is democracies versus autocracies, meaning his vision for the future is the world of conflict. How positive is that? Contrast this with China. Between national rejuvenation and common prosperity at home, as the Global Security Initiative as their vision for improved international relations, everyone is very clear on the journey they're embarked on. This is a key, if not the key reason why the West has no chance in hell to convince the rest to join them. There's simply nothing to join. Except conflict, I guess, but you join a conflict to fight for a vision, for a better world. The conflict itself cannot be the vision. This reminds me of what George Kennan, the architect of the Cold War, wrote. To win, he said, that America had to create among the peoples of the world generally the impression of a country which knows what it wants, which is coping successfully with the problems of its internal life and with the responsibilities of a world power, and which has a spiritual vitality capable of holding its own among the major ideological currents of the time. Does America give this impression today? Even in my own country, France. Ask any French person what Macron's vision for the future of France and the world is, and what the grand plan is, and you'll get very puzzled looks. Reform the pension system so we have to work longer? The truth is there's nothing. Nada. Rien. What we have essentially in the West are political operators. They think their jobs are to get re-elected and to attempt to move whatever metrics the electorate cares about. GDP, unemployment, debt levels, CO2 emissions, etc. Actual leaders have gone extinct or gone east. It's actually quite sad. Really speaks to the levels of intellectual decrepitude in the West today. The time of enlightenment, the big revolutions as well, is truly gone. We're stuck with our mediocre operators. It's also why this is such a dangerous time. A positive vision brings confidence. It brings hope. It motivates. It makes people look forward to what's to come. The West has none of that today. The future is scary. The dominant feelings are fear and anger. And when there's a lot of fear and anger, these feelings need to be directed somewhere, and our operators certainly don't want it to be them. So it's China, Iran, all those foreigners who hate our freedom. Perfect recipe for a very bad conflict. Please, don't get fooled. Bertrand's musings echo a recent quote by Professor Jeffrey Sachs at the Athens Democracy Forum. The single biggest mistake of President Biden was to say the greatest struggle of the world is between democracies and autocracies. The real struggle of the world is to live together and to overcome our common crises of environment and inequality. Indeed, we could be striving towards a more positive vision for the future. one that seeks common prosperity and improved international relations, one that works to remedy inequality and address the looming environmental crises. Instead, the world is being bifurcated, split in two, which history tells us is probably an indication that something extremely terrible is on the horizon for our species, unless we drastically change course. It's worth keeping all this in mind as nuclear-capable bombers are deployed to Australia, as NATO weighs moving nuclear weapons to Russia's border in Finland, as the Biden administration goes all in on economic warfare with China, regardless of the consequences, as Russia accuses the US of lowering the nuclear threshold by modernizing the arsenal in Europe into battlefield weapons, as the Council on Foreign Relations president openly admits that the US is now working to halt China's rise on the world stage, as China declares its willingness to deepen ties with Russia on all levels. We could have such a wonderful, healthy, collaborative world, and it's being flushed down the toilet because an empire is using its leverage over the wealthiest populations on our planet to work towards dominating all other populations. This stupid, insane quest to shore up a unipolar planetary domination is costing us everything, while gaining us nothing. It's going to be the poorest and weakest among us who suffer the most as a result. Wow, it's almost like conquering and enslaving people make them not like you. Yeah, who knew? Who knew? Right? Those people should be grateful that we civilized them. That's literally the argument that we like to use, right? Those barbaric nations are better off for us going in there and committing a genocide against them. The global south will rise again. I mean, it's already rising. Like, I mean, for God's sakes, like, we see what's going on in South America, right? I'm so happy someone made this little picture. I should actually bookmark this. What you see here in the light pink is countries with a center-left president. So your democratic socialists, right? Your Bernie Sanders types, right? In the deeper red, countries with a left-wing president. So your socialists or your communists. You're seeing like a pretty deep swing to the left. That's happening at a time that couldn't be more timely for the South American governments. On CBC today, I saw an anchor talking to someone who's an expert on Korean relations, but failed to note that the person is board member and VP of the executive committee of the NATO Assistance of Canada. Yeah, like, they don't... It's the same shit that they always do, right? They'll always just put forward a quote-unquote expert. It's like, today we're going to talk to an expert on communism. Literal Nazis. Like, that's what they do. They put literal Nazis in front of you and then say that they're the experts of communism. CIA is too busy in Ukraine and Russia. Give it time. They will try coups in those countries. But here's the thing, is Tinker, like, first of all, good to see you, but they are trying coups in these countries. Like, they are doing, like, don't forget, like, how long ago it was in Bolivia. Wasn't that long ago that they literally fomented a far-right coup in Bolivia. The thing is that the people of South America have gotten organized. They've gotten not only organized, but also extremely aware of who their enemies are and what the threats actually are. Like, they're no longer like a disorganized rabble, right? And they're no longer unarmed. Like, you think about what's been going on in Venezuela this entire time, right? You think about like, literally Hugo Chavez was couped, and the people of Venezuela created such a scene that they released him. Like, that shows you that the people of Because so much of the CIA's power and ability is to operate from the shadows and to operate clandestinely, right? And it doesn't work if the population is actually aware of it and is actually and is actually paying attention. That if you say something like this is a CIA psyop in South America, instead of what happens here where people go whatever you say, like, oh sure, everything's a psyop, right? The people of South America go, oh okay, what can we do? And then they do that. Like, that's the difference. So it's not that the CIA is not trying. Like, what do you think Juan Guaido was? Like, Juan Guaido was a CIA psyop, right? Like, it's not that they're not trying. It's just that if you have a populace that's aware, it doesn't work. And it really is that straightforward. Which just shows you how pathetic we are. Yeah, John Perkins' Confession of an Economic Hitman. We first sanction them. If that doesn't work, we send in the Jackal Assassins. And if that doesn't work, we fund a civil war. Yeah. But they know. Like, that's just it. They know. And it's having, and that knowledge, that awareness is having a dramatic effect in a lot of these places. Like, the military ranks of Venezuela have only swelled over this period of time because people are aware that the strategy of these Nazi fascists is to fund a civil war, because the sanctions didn't work, the assassins haven't worked, right? Like, maybe they got Hugo Chavez, but they didn't kill the movement. And so now they know that they're funding a civil war. And so the populace is like, okay, the CIA is funding a civil war. And so we need to join the military and protect ourselves. Like, that's what's happening across South America. And like, they're not sitting in their houses eating cheeseburgers, scoffing about what the CIA is doing, right? Like, they know. Hopefully Ford has set something off that won't go away. Hopefully people will unite and support the strike Canada-wide. I mean, right now, the question is, will the other unions join? Because there is not going to be a general strike movement of any sort unless the other unions actually join. And I said this before and I'll say it again. Now is the moment that if the other unions do not stand up and join the strike with the Kupi workers, then it's over. I mean, this, to me, this goes like so beyond anything else that we've experienced. This isn't small scale shit. Like, this is literally the Ford administration trying to strip charter rights from you. Like, things that will not pass the Supreme Court of Canada. Like, the Supreme Court of Canada will turn around and say, yeah, that's illegitimate. You can't do that. Like, straight up. But they're going to do it anyway. Because they don't actually give a fuck about anything. Except themselves. Right? They're child men. Like, we are looking at the child men of the apocalypse. That's what we are looking at. Like, these are Nietzsche's last men. That's who these people are. They're so incapable of basic compassion, logic, or reason that they will destroy the civil society for their own petty desires. Most people, by a large margin, are still bought in, and their goal in life is to be the landlord someday. Yeah, one hopes. I mean, that's their hope, I should say. Liberals said they're increasing immigration to 1.4 million in the next 3 years for the capitalist death cult. Yeah, this will increase fascist rhetoric everywhere. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's got so many different things that it does. It fuels the they took our job narrative. So it gives you somebody to scapegoat, right? So watch a bunch of scapegoating of minority groups happen. Like, these people know what they're doing. I think that this is important for us to begin actually articulating and realizing that the liberals and the conservatives understand what they're doing. They understand that they are creating Nazism. They know what they're doing. Like, the Biden administration and the Trudeau administration fund neo-Nazis in Ukraine, who in turn then come over here and then join Nazi group. Like, they know what they're doing. And then they use that growing Nazism that they are funding in order to erect a bureaucracy with the excuse that they're using it to fight against right-wing fascism, but will be used against left-wing communists. That's what it's for. And so they're erecting all of this stuff in front of our eyes while literally funding the very system to justify the existence of the bureaucracy, right? That's what they're doing. So they're erecting Nazi systems with the excuse of, we're doing this to fight Nazism. But what happens when the Nazis take power? Do those systems vanish? No. We know exactly how this is going to go. We know precisely where this is going to go. Quebec Premier says there's not accepting any more immigrants. I think other provinces will copy them. Well, I mean, like, take a look at the housing market. Like, you can't get your housing market under control and you want to get 1.4 million new people into your borders? Like, it's crazy. Like, it's crazy to think about. Like, and clearly what the Liberals are going to do is, if you stand up and actually say that that's crazy to get that high level of immigration in, that, oh, well, you're a fascist then. You're against immigrants, eh? That's what they'll do. Because they're, housing, traffic, healthcare, schools, etc. No, of course these liberals are insane. They're Nazis. Like, they literally fund neo-Nazi groups. Like, of course they are. They're not interested in helping the populace. They're interested in maintaining control and power for the oligarchs that own them. Like, it's extremely straightforward. Like, we are witnessing a reinstitution of feudalism. That's what this is. And they want to make sure that everyone is so disorganized and dislocated. Like, I think the craziest thing that's happening today is that our leadership is no longer interested in helping us. That's the bottom line. That our elected leadership, the people who are in power, because we all go and do an election, are literally not interested in helping us. That's insane. That is a failed system. And there is no leadership that is actually interested in helping us. Like, if anything should convince you that the electoral system of Western democracies has completely failed across the board to a country, it should be this recognition that all of them are trying to create a more fractious, more destabilized society for the benefit of a tiny minority of billionaires. That's what is happening in America, that's what's happening in Canada, that's what's happening across Europe, that's what's happening in Australia. The system itself is an abject and total failure that cannot be reformed. It cannot be reformed because it continuously vomits out incompetent, illiterate, narcissistic psychopaths who are literally bending the knee to oligarchs who own this place completely. And to pretend otherwise, I think you just need to be somebody like Destiny or Vosh. Just like literally just detached losers who don't genuinely care about what's happening in the society. And it's going to get really obvious really fast. Like, how often do I say this? Right? Like, take a look at what's going on with this Koopy thing. Like, take a look at how fast this is all happening. Like, we literally went from nothing to students walking out in support. We've got big rallies going on. We've got big movements going on. What's the one that and that's all happening all of the sudden, right? It's all happening all of the sudden, and I think that people are going to be really blown away with how quick a lot of this stuff happens, because it is going to happen very fast, very, very fast. I saw an American attack ad which called corporations hard-working Hoosiers. What the fuck is a Hoosier even? Imagine believing that corporations work hard. Like, imagine believing that CEOs or like, we are entering someone from Indiana, apparently. Okay. Like, imagine if they tabled like, to me, tabling legislation to make striking illegal is not different than tabling legislation to make peeing illegal. Like, no. Like, you can't, it's not going to work. It's just not going to work. And these fucking fascists, like, these people should not be able to go places. Like, I really can't express this enough. Someone like Doug Ford or Stephen Leach or any of these fucking people, like, they shouldn't be able to go to restaurants. Like, Tim Hortons staff should not serve them. When they go get their Timmies, the Tim Hortons staff should say, "Get the fuck out of here." And they should not serve them. And when they go try to get their groceries, the grocers should be like, "Nope, get the fuck out of here." These people should not be able to participate in society. That's how despicable what they're doing is. That's how disgraceful these people are. They shouldn't be able to get in or out of their driveway. They should not be able to get out of their house. They should not be able to go to a restaurant. Like, that's how despicable these people are. And in my view, it should be the role of every Ontarian to put themselves in the way of these fascists. Like, cause problems for these people. Make sure that their lives are not easy. Because what they're doing is reprehensible. Like, just like, on the darkest possible level. That the only way it gets any darker is literally start kicking in doors. Like, and that's literally the only place they've got left to go. Right? What else could they do? Right? Like, what else can they do? So they're doing everything outside of kicking in people's doors. And I'm sure we'll get there with these guys if we let them. I'm sure we'll get there with these guys. Ugh. How annoying. Like, I remember when I was younger. When I was younger, I actually thought that the society gave a shit about itself. You know? That we had some self-respect and some decency. You know? That we at least were gonna care about, you know, taking care of one another, right? Like, that we're actually gonna give a shit about people's lives, right? But now, you know, you get older and you realize Santa Claus isn't real. And you come to recognize that huge sections of the populace and huge sections of the society are more than happy if this place falls apart. You know, that the erection of a universal healthcare system, which was something we always pointed at to be like, look, we do. We care. We care about each other, and we care about each other as citizens, and we care about the well-being of everybody around us. We erected a healthcare system, right? We got it. We did it. Well, that seems to have been a flash in the pan. Seems to have just been total bullshit. Now we're dismantling that, and we're steadily and systemically dismantling that with and these total losers who are in power don't realize how desperately destructive that is. If you remove all systems that are unifying, right? If you create no unifying systems across Canada, then there's no reason for Canada to exist. If you make it so that there's nothing that's actually making us all feel as though we are Canadians, you're making it so that there is no unifying project, then why be part of it? And the unifying project seems to just be everyone's going to be a feudal serf working for feudal masters, and that's not going to maintain a civilization. Like, that's not going to maintain a society. That kind of thing doesn't actually keep cultures and civilizations together. And while you've got, like, China's actually building unifying projects. Is actually building a unified idea for itself, right? And if you've got nothing like that going on, if you've got no unified project, then what's going to happen? What's going to happen, do you think? Look, what's going to happen? And one of the things that really strikes me, I like showing these China walk-around videos because I think it's important for us to actually look at what other civilizations and what other countries look like. Like, I've never seen any of these videos. I've never seen any of these videos that have the type of despair, the type of homelessness, the type of poverty that you can see in the United States. That I can show you videos of Philadelphia where it's just full of homeless people. I can show you videos from Canada where there are tent cities. None of that's happening in China. Where is it? Where is it? And all we can do, all we can do is just arm everybody and foment war wherever we go. Yeah, if they put nukes in Finland, the nationalists in Russia won't wait for Putin's negotiations. I mean, we'll see. We'll see. It's all very chaotic right now, you know? It's all very chaotic right now. I tend to look at what's going on in the Ukraine war at the moment as a... We're gonna see what happens come, like, February. There's going to be a lot of rubber hitting the road, and it's going to happen pretty fast. And the truth of the matter is that Russia has secured a front line. It has gotten the territory that it wanted to get in the first place. It claimed that territory. It's got between 200 and 300,000 men joining the front line, coming to the front line, while NATO and Ukraine are doing nothing of that sort on that scale. The weapons and the ammunition that NATO has been funneling in has been used and is depleted. And it really is just like a matter of time. Like, the Biden administration literally cannot continuously funnel money into that war. It simply can't. And NATO and the NATO nations can't just continuously funnel money into that war. It simply can't. And once people start freezing, which is a guarantee across Europe, people are not going to accept these narratives, of, oh, you're sending $1 billion to Ukraine while my daughter freezes. Like, they're just not going to accept that. There's a TikTok video on Jen Zedong right now showing China bringing food to Afghanistan. Yeah, of course. China's entire strategy over the last 50 years has been to create win-win negotiations and win-win diplomacy. And it understands that building goodwill is good for their nation and good for their country. So bringing food into Afghanistan is a great way to build relations in order to get a Belt and Road Initiative line into Afghanistan, which they absolutely want. They absolutely want a Belt and Road Initiative line into Afghanistan. Like, you don't need to dig too hard into seeing why that's the case. Like, just look at Google Maps for 5 minutes, right? Like, and I said this at the time when the Americans left, right? When the Americans left, like right now, the Chinese have lines that are going up through like Kazakhstan and then down into Uzbekistan, into Iran, through Turkey. So they've got these lines that are kind of going up this way. But what they really want is a line that goes from the Kashgar prefecture through the Wakhan corridor directly into Kabul. They want a line that goes right through here. Just click, click. Nice and clean. Nice and easy, right? And they want to make sure, because if they can get a line connected in here and then connected from Kabul directly into Tehran, click, click, right? Like, that's a real straight shot line that takes it straight up into Europe and goes into Turkey, goes up into Europe, and also goes through Iran. And ultimately what they want it to do is go Tehran into Baghdad, because they know that eventually they'll leave, the Americans will leave Iraq. They know. So it'll go Tehran, Baghdad, and then down here into the city of Neom that they're building, that Saudi Arabia is building. And then underneath the Gulf of Aqaba, thereby avoiding Israel, and then connecting into Cairo, the Suez Canal, and then boom, into the rest of Africa. That's the goal. Like, pretty straightforwardly, near as I can see. When is the... Let's get more specific here. When are the American... They're soon, eh? They're real soon. Oh, yeah. They're like tomorrow. Dude, this is going to be a shit show. This is going to be a shit show for the Democrats. This is going to be a real shit show. Like, they're going to lose the House and they're going to lose the Senate. Like, people are just not going to show up. It's and that seems to be the narrative of what's going on in Western democracies now. That the progressives and the communists and the socialists and the people who actually like want to see the ball moved are straight up just going, these people are frauds. There's no reason to interact in the system. They're thinking the way that I'm talking, right? There's no reason to interact in this system. And believe that it's going to have any credible outcome. And so you're going to see a whole bunch of Republicans get into power. And it's going to be a total shit show. It's going to be two years of a lame duck presidency, because Biden's not going to be able to get anything done. And then Donald Trump will run and Donald Trump will win, because nobody will show up. Because Joe Biden said that we've got to stand up against fascism, and I think that Biden's been far more fascist on certainly on the global stage than Donald Trump was, right? It's great to see, because millions of people at risk of starvation in Afghanistan, we're withholding billions of their money. Yeah. No, Westerners creating actual famines and then accusing other people of doing famines? What? China made a mistake not invading Taiwan. They will pay dearly when Japan gives Taiwan nukes. If Japan actually gives Taiwan nukes, China will just invade. Like, Like, literally, the nukes will be on a boat going towards Taiwan, and China will just go. Like, China showed very clearly with the Pelosi situation that they are ready. That they are ready to go at the drop of a hat. And they can go. And if we start sending nuclear bombs into Taiwan, they'll go. Like, China's desire and what China would like to see with Taiwan is... what China would like to see with Taiwan is just eventually a diplomatic solution. That eventually Taiwan and China will just look at one another and be like, okay, we did it. Like, nod of the head. You know, that China will send a delegation to Taiwan and there'll be some signing of documents. Like, that's what China wants. I mean, who doesn't take China seriously? I think at this point, if you think that China's showing weakness, like, when Pelosi went to Taiwan, like, China basically surrounded Taiwan, did major military drills, was doing flyovers of Japan. Like, it was a very, very, very serious situation. Yeah, we got people with guns, quote unquote, guarding the elections. Yeah. Like, it's a total... What's going on in America is a total clusterfuck. Like, it's a total clusterfuck that they're not going to recover from. Like, we are seeing a descent. Because it's not enough to say a descent into fascism. Like, the Democrats have been just as fascist as the Republicans this whole time. It's just that the Democrats are a little bit better at looking like they aren't, you know? Like, people look at Bill Clinton and think that, oh, he wasn't as bad as George Bush. But Bill Clinton was invading Kosovo. Like, Bill Clinton was doing all kinds of crazy shit. Like, NATO sees China as weak. They are crazy how you would explain them thinking of putting nukes in Finland. Yeah, we're not dealing with sane people in power. I think that that's the truth. Like, really, I think that's the truth. I think the systems of capital have generated detached, narcissistic yes men who are truly incapable and truly incompetent. That now the moment has come for them to make decisions, and they're so used to just saying yes, sir, that when they make decisions, they make it from this extremely narcissistic position that insists that, well, we'll just do that, and then they'll say yes, sir. Right? And it's just not what's going to happen. And they don't care to listen to what the Chinese and the Russians actually say. They don't care to know anything about what these powers actually say or think or how they actually communicate. Like, there are people at the highest levels of government that actually still genuinely say out loud that China is a dictatorship. And they actually believe that. Like, that's how childish and silly, like really silly, these people are, and how incapable we have become in terms of building a civilization for ourselves. Like, we are desperately unwise. We are desperately unwise, desperately incapable. And yet we have all of these bombs and these nukes and all of this crazy power. So we're just like a 6-year-old with like an automatic rifle. It's insane. It's insane how stupid we've become. Generation Y me, I finished my application to a PhD program in Vancouver. Time to drink and smoke. Good for you, bud. Good for you, bud. Not on finishing the PhD program or the application, but on drinking and smoking. Good for you. What's the PhD program for? What is it that you're trying to get your PhD in? Besides a PhD and never paying off that loan and not having a job afterwards. Hey, too close to the mark. Too close to the mark. Oh, I'm blown away at how sleepy I am all of a sudden. I slept like all day. I had like the greatest sleep ever, and now it's like 8 o'clock, and it feels like it's already 9. Like I feel like the show should already be over, and I'm just like sitting here being like, man, I'm so sleepy. I didn't have a coffee. That's part of it. I didn't have a coffee today. I usually have a coffee, but now I'm just like, kind of just want to go back to sleep. Have like another great, fantastic set of dreams. Just a fantastic, the COVID sleepies. Yeah. Maybe. Hey, Major, how you doing, bud? Good to see you. Good to see you. I don't know what to talk about in this last hour, guys. I gotta be honest with you. I feel like I'm, yeah, let's do that. Let's do that. Let's do the David Lynch. Let's do the David Lynch number draw. Ligandizi with a great idea. Here we go. Yeah, I'm in with the 7 again.
For today's number, it's November 2, 2022.
Here we go. Each ball has a number.
Numbers 1 through 10. Swirl the numbers.
Here we go. Here we go.
Pick a number.
We got a couple of 1s in the chat. I feel like it is a 1.
Number is
Yeah.
1.
Oh, that's amazing how that happened. I just like looked over and I was like, oh, there's a couple of 1s in the chat. And then I was like, you know, I do feel like it is a 1. Tinker, Gino, both of you, you're the winner. You're today's winner. Congratulations. Winner, winner, chicken dinner. Do, 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 do. Oh. I'm glad that you feel good, Tinker. I'm glad that you feel good. You know what, guys? I really hate to do this. I don't feel good. I actually feel really tired. I feel really, really tired. I'm going to call it. I'm going to call it. Always remember, guys, each and every one of you is a quantum being walking around in quantum energy. The billionaires are spending hundreds of billions of dollars in the hopes you'll never realize it. You'll just stay the good little commodity they need you to be. Revolt. Rebel. Repent. Good luck. We're going to need it.